They say silence speaks louder than words, but only when it's the right kind of silence. For centuries, the rise and ruin of kings, philosophers, and entire empires have begun with a whisper, a secret revealed to the wrong ear. You see, in every age, the most powerful men and women weren't the ones who spoke the loudest, but the ones who knew when not to speak at all. Because words, once released, can't be recalled. But silence. Silence can protect you, preserve you, and even elevate you. Today, in a world that worships oversharing, where people post their every move, every emotion, every thought, the true Stoic stands apart, calm, private, unreadable, powerful. Welcome to Stoic Sage Academy, where ancient wisdom meets the modern mind. In this video, you'll discover 10 things a true Stoic never reveals, and why your silence may be your greatest strength. Stay till the end, because the last one might just change how you see yourself forever. Number 1, the battles no one sees. Every face hides a private war, a silent struggle fought beneath polite smiles, calm eyes, and composed words. You look around, and it's easy to assume that everyone else has it figured out. The confident coworker, the smiling friend, the calm stranger who seems unbothered by life's chaos. But beneath the surface, each of them carries unseen burdens, doubts, fears, regrets, memories that echo in the quiet hours of the night. And yet, they keep walking. They keep showing up, because life, as the Stoics knew, is not lived on the battlefield outside, but in the quiet warfare within, the war against your impulses, the war against discouragement, the war against your own thoughts when they turn against you. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." But look deeper. He wasn't speaking about grand public tragedies. He was talking about the small, invisible moments, the ones no one applauds, when you wake up after a night of self-doubt and still face the day. When you choose restraint instead of revenge. When you resist the urge to explain yourself to people who will never understand. Those are the real battles. Quiet, unseen, and yet profoundly transformative. There's a reason Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, wrote his reflections not for the world, but for himself. He faced betrayal, loss, illness, and the crushing weight of power. Yet in his private writings, meditations, he never bragged, never complained. He simply reasoned with himself like a soldier tending his wounds after war, because a Stoic knows peace is not found in the absence of struggle, but in the mastery of it. You see, when you share every hardship with the world, you scatter your strength. You invite noise, opinions, judgments, pity, and misunderstanding. But when you contain that struggle, when you observe it, endure it, and learn from it, you distill it into wisdom. Your silence becomes your shield. Your composure becomes your armor. Your endurance becomes your teacher. Seneca once said, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." But here's what he didn't mean. He didn't say, talk about your difficulties. He said, endure them. Because endurance, not expression, builds character. In our modern world, people mistake vulnerability for oversharing. They confuse emotional awareness with emotional exhibition. But the Stoic path teaches balance. That true vulnerability is not putting your wounds on display. It's tending to them quietly, without resentment, without the need for applause. Think of a blacksmith forging a blade. The process is loud, hot, and painful. But the finished sword? Silent, deadly, refined. That's you. Every trial, every unseen hardship is hammering something within you. Resilience, clarity, patience. You may not see it yet, but one day, you'll look back and realize that the quiet battles were the ones that built your strength. Consider the story of Admiral James Stockdale, a modern Stoic and U.S. naval officer captured during the Vietnam War. He was imprisoned for 7 years, tortured repeatedly, isolated, and stripped of everything. But he survived, not because he cried out to the world, but because he turned inward. Stockdale said, "I never lost faith in the end of the story." He credited Epictetus for his survival, for teaching him that even in total isolation, the one thing no one could touch was his inner freedom. His suffering became a silent testament to the Stoic truth that the greatest battles are not won by the body, but by the spirit. Now, your wars may not be fought in prisons or palaces. They might be quieter. The daily grind, the heartbreak no one knows about, the anxiety that wakes you at 3 a.m. But the principle remains the same. You don't need the world's validation to endure. You don't need the world's sympathy to rise, because endurance, in silence, is a kind of sacred discipline, one that transforms pain into power, confusion into clarity, and chaos into calm. The Stoics often spoke of the inner citadel, a fortress within your mind that no one can breach unless you open the gates yourself. Your unseen battles are the architects of that citadel. Each test, each disappointment, each heartbreak adds another layer of strength, another wall of understanding. That's why Stoics practiced composure even when the world crumbled around them, not to suppress emotion, but to remain sovereign over it. So when life presses down on you, don't rush to announce your suffering. Sit with it, study it, let it temper you. Because mastery isn't found in avoiding pain. It's found in refusing to be broken by it. And yet silence doesn't mean isolation. It means discernment. You can share your pain, but only with those who have earned the right to hear it. Those who listen not with curiosity, but with compassion. Not everyone who hears you will understand, and not everyone who understands will care. So choose your confessions as carefully as you choose your friends. Your private battles deserve sacred spaces, not public stages. The truth is, some victories are too pure for applause. They belong only to you. The mornings you fought to rise, the nights you held back tears, the choices you made to stay kind when you could have been cruel. Those are the victories that shape your spirit. And when no one sees them, when no one praises you for them, they become even more powerful. Because then, you're no longer fighting for validation. You're fighting for virtue, and that, the Stoics believed, is the only victory that truly matters. So, the next time you feel unseen in your struggle, remember, the world may not witness your quiet war, but the universe always keeps score. Your calm is noticed, your restraint is remembered, and your silence, though invisible, echoes louder than any cry for attention. Some battles are not meant to be shared. They are meant to be conquered, alone, in the quiet chambers of your soul. Number 2, the whispers of doubt. Am I good enough? What if I fail? What if they're right about me? These are not just questions. They are echoes from the quiet corners of the mind, soft enough to be ignored, but loud enough to shape every decision you make. Doubt rarely shouts. It whispers. It arrives disguised as caution, humility, realism. It tells you to wait, to think it over, to prepare just a little longer. And before you know it, that little longer becomes a lifetime. Every person you admire, from emperors to artists, from philosophers to leaders, has wrestled with these same whispers. The difference is not that they didn't hear them. It's that they learned not to obey them. A Stoic doesn't deny the existence of doubt. He studies it. He treats it not as an enemy to destroy, but as a teacher to understand. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." But there's a deeper message hidden here. If it is right, do not hesitate to do it, even if fear whispers otherwise. Because hesitation, more than failure, is what keeps potential buried. The Stoics knew this truth well. Courage is not the absence of doubt, but the decision to act in spite of it. You see, when we share every flicker of self-doubt with others, seeking comfort, validation, reassurance, we unknowingly feed the very beast we wish to silence. The more we speak of our fears, the more we give them form. Words give weight to what might otherwise have dissolved in silence. In the modern world, people have mistaken expression for healing. We believe that if we talk enough about our insecurities, they will lose their sting. But often the opposite happens, that they grow roots. They multiply. They start defining us. A Stoic understands that healing begins not with noise, but with stillness. Self-doubt isn't something to announce. It's something to examine quietly. the way a philosopher examines a paradox. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Think about that. Most of your fears never happen. Most of your imagined failures never see the light of day. Yet they occupy space in your mind as if they were already real. You worry about being rejected, so you never speak. You fear being judged, so you never act. You fear failing, so you never begin. And so doubt wins without ever needing proof. But the Stoic sees through this illusion. He knows that fear and doubt are projections, shadows cast by thoughts, not realities written in stone. He understands that the only way to silence them is to move, to act in defiance of uncertainty, to prove, through experience, that the whispers were wrong. Let's look at a real example. The Roman general and Stoic philosopher, Marcus Porcius Cato, known as Cato the Younger, faced immense political pressure. Surrounded by corruption, betrayal, and deceit, even he must have heard the whispers. What if you stand alone? What if no one supports you? But Cato never compromised his principles. He stood firm, even when it cost him allies, comfort, and eventually his life. His silence in the face of doubt wasn't weakness. It was power. Because true confidence isn't born from arrogance. It's forged in the quiet furnace of uncertainty. Every Stoic learned this truth. You can't control the noise outside, but you can master the dialogue within. In our age, doubt has evolved. It no longer whispers just in solitude. It shouts through comparison. Every scroll on social media tells you who you should be, how far behind you are, how perfect others seem. You begin to think, maybe I'm not doing enough. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm not meant for more. But remember this, people only share their victories, not their battles. You're comparing your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel. Stoicism reminds us that your worth is not determined by noise or numbers, but by the constancy of your effort and the calmness of your mind when no one is watching. When doubt creeps in, the Stoic doesn't run from it. He welcomes it to the table. He asks, "What are you trying to teach me?" Because sometimes doubt reveals where you lack preparation. Sometimes it exposes where your ego has grown too loud. And sometimes it simply tests your resolve, asking whether you truly mean what you say you want. To a Stoic, self-doubt is a mirror, not an obstacle. It shows you where your faith in yourself is weak, and where you need to strengthen your reasoning, your discipline, your trust in nature's order. Epictetus taught his students to challenge every fearful thought with logic. He'd ask, "Can you control this? No? Then let it go. Can you act upon it? Yes? Then act. And don't dwell." Simple, profound, timeless. Here's a truth that few accept. Confidence doesn't precede action. It follows it. You don't wait to feel ready before moving. You move until you feel ready. That's why the Stoic refuses to let doubt freeze him. He acts in accordance with reason, not emotion. He knows that courage, like a muscle, only grows through use. And every time he takes a step despite fear, the whispers lose their power. Don't invite the world into your storm. Most people will only bring more wind. Because when you expose your insecurities to those who don't understand your path, they won't calm you. They'll confuse you. People project their own fears onto your dreams. They'll tell you to be realistic, to lower your standards, to take fewer risks, not because they wish you harm, but because they fear failure themselves. The Stoic doesn't seek counsel from the crowd. He seeks clarity within himself. He takes advice from those who live with reason, not those who live with noise. When the whispers of doubt arise, as they will again and again, remember, they are not commands. They are invitations. Invitations to understand your mind, to refine your will, to strengthen your resolve. Let doubt visit, but do not let it stay. Let it speak, but do not let it rule. For every whisper of "what if I fail?" respond with the Stoic truth. What if I succeed quietly, steadily, without needing anyone's permission? And if you ever feel alone in your doubt, remember, even Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, wrote nightly to himself because he too needed reminding. reminding that the mind can be its own enemy or its greatest ally. Your choice determines which it becomes. So face your doubts not with noise, but with discipline. Not with fear, but with philosophy. Not with desperation, but with calm. Because the Stoic knows, the more you face your doubts in silence, the smaller they become. And eventually, the only voice left in the room will be your own, quiet, grounded, and unshaken. Number 3, your future plans. Never reveal the blueprint of your becoming, not because the world doesn't deserve to know, but because it hasn't earned the right to understand. Your ambitions are sacred ground, fragile when spoken too soon, powerful when guarded in silence. A Stoic understands that energy leaks through words. Every time you announce, you scatter fragments of your focus into the wind, and the wind does not give them back. When you speak too early about what you're building, you invite unseen forces into your process, opinions, doubts, comparisons, envy. What was once pure becomes diluted. What was once internal becomes performative. People begin to project their limitations onto your vision. They'll tell you what can't be done, what shouldn't be done, what they would do if they were you. And if you're not careful, their doubts will start to sound like reason. That's why a Stoic moves quietly, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. Napoleon once said, "Never interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake." But the Stoic takes it a step further. Never announce your next move to anyone, friend or foe, because secrecy is not deception. It's discipline. It's the art of protecting what's still forming. An idea, like a seed, needs darkness before it can grow toward light. Expose it too soon, and it dies under the weight of other people's expectations. In the ancient world, even the wisest men spoke little about their plans. Marcus Aurelius never proclaimed his philosophy to the world. He wrote in private for himself in the quiet of the night, reminding his mind to stay disciplined amid power. Seneca, despite being an advisor to emperors, often warned, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those you can improve. The process is mutual." He understood. True work is done in silence, shared only with those who can sharpen your reason, not feed your ego. We live in an age that rewards exposure, where every thought becomes a post, every plan becomes a promise to the crowd, every milestone becomes a performance. But the Stoic knows, the more you share, the more you scatter. And when your attention is divided, your results lose power. There is strength in quiet progress, in showing up day after day without applause, without updates, without needing validation. Because when you move in silence, the only voice you hear is your own, unshaken, undistracted, and true. Modern psychology confirms what the ancients already knew. When you talk about your goals, your brain releases the same dopamine you'd feel if you'd already achieved them. In other words, by speaking too soon, you trick your mind into satisfaction and rob yourself of the hunger that drives creation. That's why the Stoics prized restraint. To them, silence wasn't emptiness. It was strength under control. They knew that every spoken word either builds or bleeds your energy, and nothing drains potential faster than the need to be seen. Think of Epictetus, once a slave, later a philosopher whose teachings shaped centuries. He didn't announce his rise. He didn't broadcast his transformation. He simply lived it. He taught that our first duty is to master our own impulses, including the impulse to speak. For speech is easy. Endurance is divine. He said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." Notice, he didn't say, "Tell the world." He said, "Say to yourself." Your vision belongs there, within. A Stoic doesn't reveal his plans because he doesn't need external permission to begin. He doesn't wait for encouragement, approval, or recognition. He moves with quiet certainty that his path, though unseen, is unfolding as it should. Because the wise understand, the less you explain, the less you're interrupted. When no one knows your next step, no one can interfere with it. Even nature follows this law. Seeds germinate underground, storms form beyond the horizon, and transformation begins in silence. The universe doesn't announce, it unfolds. In today's world, noise has become a kind of addiction. People rush to declare what they will do, not what they've done. They crave the illusion of progress over the discipline of patience. But you, if you walk the Stoic path, must do the opposite. Guard your progress like sacred fire. Feed it quietly, consistently, until it grows strong enough to speak for itself. Because the truth is, no one forgets the man who moves without warning. His success appears sudden, his presence undeniable. But those who understand the discipline behind it know it wasn't sudden. It was silent. Let your plans mature in stillness. Let your actions be your only announcement. Let your success speak in a language no words can match, results, because silence is not emptiness, it's focus. And in a world that speaks too much, focus is rare power. So remember, every time you speak of your next move, you give away a piece of its strength. Every time you defend your dream to others, you drain it of energy. And every time you stay silent, you sharpen it, move quietly, build privately. Let the world discover you by accident. In an age of exposure, secrecy is not secrecy, and it's strategy. And silence is not weakness, it's wisdom in motion. Number 4, the comforts you resist. Discipline is sacred when it's unseen, because what you do in silence defines what you become in the light. In an age where every effort is broadcast, and every struggle must be witnessed to be real, the Stoic chooses the opposite path, the narrow, unglamorous one. He practices restraint not for validation, but for victory over himself. The world celebrates indulgence. Stoicism celebrates endurance. When you announce every sacrifice, it loses its purity. Every time you speak of what you've resisted, you shift the focus from mastery to performance. The act no longer refines you. It begins to entertain others. A true Stoic knows that the moment virtue is displayed for praise, it stops being virtue. It becomes vanity. Marcus Aurelius wrote privately, not publicly, "If it is endurable, then endure it. Stop complaining." Those words were never meant for applause. They were reminders whispered into the darkness of his own mind. Because discipline, to be real, must be done for the soul, not the crowd. The ancients understood something modern culture has forgotten. Ease corrupts faster than hardship hurts. Comfort softens the spirit. It convinces you that rest is the goal, when in truth, rest is only the pause between trials. The Stoics sought difficulty not because they loved pain, but because they knew peace was earned through endurance, not indulgence. When Marcus Aurelius fasted or slept on the floor, he wasn't punishing himself. He was training himself. Training to be free from dependency. Training to remain unshaken if luxury were stripped away tomorrow. He once reminded himself, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." That wasn't pessimism. It was preparation. Seneca wrote about practicing poverty. He would occasionally eat coarse bread, wear rough clothing, and sleep without comfort. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to remember that he could. He called it the rehearsal of misfortune, a way to remind himself that a man who can live simply cannot be enslaved by desire. He asked, "Is this what I feared?" And every time, the answer was no, because the fear of discomfort is almost always greater than the discomfort itself. The Stoic therefore resists comfort, not as punishment, but as liberation. In our age, resistance has become rebellion. To wake early, to eat simply, to speak little, to control your temper, these are now acts of quiet defiance. They go against the grain of indulgence, distraction, and endless self-promotion. But that is exactly why they are sacred. Every time you choose discomfort, you reclaim a piece of yourself from the world. You remind your mind that it serves you, not your impulses. That your happiness is not dictated by luxury, but by alignment with reason. Discipline is not about doing more. It's about needing less. To the Stoic, the greatest wealth is to want nothing unnecessary. To master appetite, emotion, and time, that is the highest form of freedom. When you wake before dawn, when you meditate instead of scroll, when you walk away from temptation, those are victories. Small, silent, invisible victories. And each one chisels away at the weaker version of you. You won't get applause for them. You shouldn't. Because applause belongs to the world, and your discipline belongs to the soul. Modern life tells us that comfort is success, the right home, the soft chair, the convenient life. But the Stoic knows that the pursuit of ease is the beginning of decay. Ease invites stagnation. Comfort dulls the edge, and when life finally demands strength, the comfortable man discovers that he has none left. So the Stoic keeps himself ready. He trains in the unseen hours, when no one watches, no one praises, no one applauds. Because he knows that the true test of character will not come when he is prepared, but when he is surprised. There's a quiet dignity in restraint, a beauty in refusing what others crave. It builds something stronger than pleasure, control, and control is the foundation of peace. Every desire resisted, every indulgence denied, is a thread in the fabric of your inner strength. Each time you say no to ease, you say yes to growth. You choose to live with purpose rather than drift with impulse. As Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Freedom is not found in the absence of rules. It is found in the mastery of discipline. Let your quiet acts of discipline be your private victories. Let them shape you in ways the world will never see, because the value of your effort doesn't come from being witnessed. It comes from being real. You don't need to post your early mornings, your sacrifices, your self-restraint. You don't need to prove your will to anyone. The strongest men don't perform discipline. They live it. Silently, consistently, unshakably. In the end, comfort is the test that breaks most men, not suffering. Because comfort whispers softly, "You've done enough." It seduces the mind into stillness long before the battle is won. But you, the Stoic, you resist that whisper. You remind yourself that greatness isn't achieved through pleasure but through perseverance. Let others chase ease. You chase strength. Let others display their effort. You build yours in silence, for it's not the struggle that defines you, but the discipline you keep when no one is watching. And in that quiet, sacred place, unseen, unpraised, uncelebrated, you become unbreakable. Number 5, your vulnerabilities. Every hero has an Achilles heel, but only a fool reveals it. Your weaknesses are sacred, not to be paraded, not to be buried in shame, but to be guarded with quiet dignity and fierce awareness. Because what you expose can be used against you, and what you understand can never be weaponized by anyone again. The Stoics never denied weakness. They simply refused to worship it. They saw vulnerability not as a wound to hide, but as a truth to understand, a teacher whispering lessons about pride, ego, and resilience. Epictetus, born a slave and crippled in body, was perhaps one of the strongest men who ever lived. He once said, "It's not the things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them." He could not change his physical pain, but he mastered his judgment of it, and in doing so, he turned weakness into wisdom. True Stoicism is not the absence of pain. It is the mastery of pain, without making it your identity. Modern culture tells us to share everything, every fear, every flaw, every emotional crack. It's a world that romanticizes exposure and calls it authenticity. But the Stoic asks, is it wise to give the world the map to your unguarded heart? Because once you reveal your softest parts to the wrong people, you give them the very tools to destroy you. Not everyone who listens understands. Not everyone who understands cares. And not everyone who cares has earned the right to your truth. To be open is not to be honest. To be honest is not to be careless. Wisdom lives in the space between expression and discretion. A Stoic does not reject vulnerability, he refines it. He studies it the way a blacksmith studies steel, testing, tempering, reshaping. He doesn't declare, "I have no weaknesses." He declares, "I know where I am weak, and I am mastering it." Vulnerability, when understood, becomes strength. When ignored, it becomes destruction. The difference lies in self-awareness, that unflinching mirror where courage meets honesty. Abraham Lincoln's melancholy wasn't a curse, it was his compass. It softened his words, deepened his empathy, and made him a leader of quiet strength. He didn't broadcast his sadness. He channeled it into patience, humility, and endurance. Julius Caesar, on the other hand, possessed brilliance, yet trusted too easily. His vulnerability wasn't emotional fragility, but misplaced confidence in human loyalty. That trust, once betrayed, ended with a dagger in his back and his empire slipping away. From both men, we learn. It's not weakness that destroys us. It's the careless exposure of it. Not all pain needs an audience, because when you make your suffering a performance, it loses its purity. Suffering, in silence, sharpens you. It strips away illusion. It teaches you where your real limits are, and then pushes you beyond them. Seneca once said, "Fire tests gold, adversity tests men." Notice, the test isn't public, it's private. The fire doesn't ask for applause, it simply refines. In the same way, your pain doesn't need witnesses to be meaningful. Its power lies in the transformation it creates within you, not the sympathy it earns from others. There's a kind of power in saying nothing, in holding your suffering quietly. Like a blade in the dark, this doesn't mean you repress emotion. It means you govern it. Because once you learn to hold your pain without flinching, no insult, no betrayal, no loss can take away your composure. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He wrote those words not as emperor, but as a man who buried children, faced betrayal, and ruled through plague and war. His writings weren't cries for help. They were reminders to himself. Endure, reflect, grow. That is the Stoics' way, to hurt quietly and to heal deliberately. In today's world, vulnerability has been commodified, turned into content, measured in clicks, views, and sympathetic comments. But what happens when pain becomes performance? It stops healing and starts entertaining. The Stoics warned against this, not because they lacked emotion, but because they believed emotion loses its meaning when it's shared without purpose. You don't owe your pain to the world. You owe it to yourself to understand it. Think of a wound healing under a bandage. You wouldn't peel it open to show everyone the progress. That would only slow the recovery. Your vulnerabilities are no different. Until they heal, protect them. Until they become lessons, keep them private. When they transform into wisdom, then and only then can they be shared to uplift others. The Stoic doesn't hide scars. He hides open wounds. He waits until the pain has matured into perspective. Then his story becomes medicine, not weakness. To master vulnerability is to reclaim authorship of your inner world. You decide what to reveal, when, and why. You decide whether your pain will poison or purify you. Because once you understand your weaknesses deeply, once you face them, train them, and transcend them, they stop being weapons against you and start becoming your armor. And that armor, though invisible, makes you unshakable. Your weaknesses are not your enemy. They are your compass. They point you toward where you must grow. But never forget, growth begins in silence, not in spectacle. The roots that grow deepest are the ones no one sees. So guard your vulnerabilities as you would guard sacred fire. Tend to them. Study them. Strengthen them, but do not display them, because once you do, they belong to the world. And the world, as the Stoics remind us, is fickle. You owe it to yourself to keep some things unseen, because in what remains unseen lies your invincibility. The Stoic Sage Academy reminds you it's not about pretending to be unbreakable. It's about learning where you break and forging yourself stronger there. Guard your heart. Know your weakness. Master both. That is the way of the Stoic. Number 6, your grievances. There is no strength in constant complaint. Every time you repeat your pain, you breathe life back into it. Every time you retell your story of injustice, you chain yourself again to the memory of it. The Stoic understands. To complain is to serve the very thing that wounded you. To rise above it, silently, is to render it powerless. Every grievance demands payment, and it's always collected in peace. Each time you speak of what went wrong, each time you replay what should have been, you deposit another coin of your energy into the bank of resentment. And resentment compounds, not in wealth, but in exhaustion. The Stoic path is not about denying wrongs. It's about refusing to be owned by them. When Epictetus said, "It's not the thing that disturbs you, but your opinion of it," he wasn't dismissing pain. He was redirecting power. He was teaching us that perception is the root of both our suffering and our salvation. Every ego craves justice, or rather the appearance of it. We want to be seen as right, as righteous, as wronged, but vindication is a mirage. Even when you win, your heart remains tired, because you've traded serenity for validation. Marcus Aurelius warned himself in Meditations, "The best revenge is to be unlike your enemy. To react is to mirror the one who harmed you. To reflect is to transcend them." So the Stoic does not rush to defend his name or prove his worth. He lets time and truth speak on his behalf. There's a peculiar comfort in retelling pain. It makes us feel justified, alive, even dramatic. But every time you rehearse an old injury, your mind cannot tell the difference between memory and reality. You feel the wound reopen, the emotion reawaken. The Stoic sees this pattern clearly. He knows that the mind, like a garden, grows whatever is planted, and constant grievance grows weeds of bitterness. So instead of feeding the memory, he observes it, understands it, and lets it fade naturally. Not through suppression, but through sovereignty, a quiet choosing of peace over replay. In the ancient world, silence wasn't emptiness, it was strength. The Stoics believed that restraint was the highest form of self-control, because silence cannot be misquoted. It cannot be provoked. It cannot be defeated. When wronged, the untrained mind reacts instantly, with anger, accusation, or self-pity. But the disciplined mind pauses, as if saying, "Let me make sure this deserves my peace before I offer it." That pause, that single breath, is the difference between chaos and composure. Imagine your grievance as a stone thrown into a still pond. The more you talk about it, the more ripples you create, disturbing your own reflection. The Stoic watches the ripple, studies it, then lets it settle. He learns not to touch the water again. This is not weakness. It is mastery, the art of not amplifying pain through reaction. When Cato the Younger was betrayed by political allies, he didn't waste breath on bitterness. He simply said, "Let them act according to their nature and I according to mine." He understood that moral integrity doesn't require an audience. He didn't need to prove injustice, he needed to preserve his character. Contrast that with countless rulers who spent their lives defending pride, fighting endless wars to avenge personal slights, and in doing so, lost empires, allies, and peace. Cato lost battles, but not himself. And in the Stoic tradition, that is the only true victory. To complain is to declare, "I am powerless." And the Stoic cannot afford that declaration, because every complaint confirms dependency on the external, on others, on fairness, on outcomes beyond control. Seneca wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." Adversity is the stage upon which strength performs, but complaint? It is the whisper that says, "I wish to remain a spectator." The Stoic steps onto the stage instead. He plays his part, with discipline, grace, and silence. Grievance, when studied, becomes wisdom. When ignored, it becomes poison. To analyze your pain is not to dwell on it. It's to strip it of mystery, to understand its structure, to reclaim authorship. You ask yourself, what did this teach me? What expectation was shattered? What within me allowed this to hurt so much? In that process, your grievance transforms, from wound to weapon, from burden to boundary. And in that quiet transformation, you become untouchable. There's a fine line between dignity and ego. Dignity protects your peace. Ego protects your image. A Stoic knows which to defend. He doesn't respond to every insult or injustice because he understands that reaction is a form of surrender. He values inner stillness more than external recognition. So when wronged, he reminds himself, "My peace is worth more than my pride." Grievances are inevitable. Suffering is optional. You cannot control betrayal, injustice, or loss. But you can control whether those moments echo forever in your mind. When you let go of grievance, you don't erase the past. You release its claim over your present. You stop narrating pain and start authoring peace. Because the Stoic knows, complaints may sound powerful, but silence, guided by understanding, is power perfected. So when wronged, pause. When accused, breathe. When hurt, rise, not for them, not for revenge, but for your own liberation. Your peace is worth more than your pride. That is not just a phrase. It is a philosophy, a quiet rebellion against the world's addiction to outrage. To hold your calm when the world expects chaos, that is Stoicism in its purest form. Number 7, your triumphs. In an era obsessed with validation, humility is rebellion. We live in a world where every sunrise must be posted, every effort must be praised, and every achievement must be witnessed to be believed. But the Stoic knows, real greatness does not seek witnesses. It seeks weight. Every achievement whispered to the crowd loses a little of its magic. Because applause is not oxygen, it is smoke. It rises quickly, dazzles briefly, and disappears into the air, leaving you craving more. The Stoics believed that triumph is not a moment. It's a state of being. It is not what you do once, but what you become through repetition, discipline, and endurance. When you broadcast every milestone, you unconsciously trade growth for gratification. Because what is celebrated too soon is rarely completed fully. Seneca warned, "He who indulges in empty praise loses the taste for honest toil." The wise builder doesn't boast of the first brick. He waits until the foundation is firm. So too, the Stoic crafts his success quietly, brick by brick. Knowing that true mastery needs no announcement, applause is conditional. It comes not for who you are, but for what people perceive you to be. Today, they cheer you. Tomorrow, they forget you. To build your confidence on external validation is to build a fortress on sand. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "Fame is but noise and the opinion of fools." He ruled an empire, yet treated recognition as dust. He knew that to depend on admiration is to surrender autonomy. For once you crave applause, you begin to perform, not to grow. And performance, in time, becomes a prison. What is triumph to the Stoic? Not medals, not followers, not fortune, but self-mastery. Victory, in the Stoic sense, is the quiet evening after temptation resisted. It is the peace that comes after choosing principle over impulse. It is walking away from conflict with your composure intact. The Stoics' triumphs cannot be photographed. They live in the mind, the invisible, uncelebrated, yet eternal. The myth of Icarus is not about wings or flight. It's about the intoxication of recognition. Icarus flew not because he could, but because he wanted to be seen. And the louder his flight became, the faster he fell. The Stoic does not fly for the eyes of others. He ascends in silence, steady, deliberate, indifferent to applause, because he knows, the higher you rise in vanity, the thinner the air becomes for wisdom. Modern man mistakes visibility for success, but what is visible is not always valuable. The Stoic understands that visibility attracts envy, distraction, and expectation, the very forces that erode peace. So he hides his progress not out of fear, but out of respect for its sacredness. When you keep your triumphs private, you protect them from contamination, from the projections of others, from premature pride, from the corrosion of comparison. True success is not a performance. It's a pilgrimage. In a culture that shouts every minor victory, to whisper yours is a radical act. When everyone is chasing attention, to choose obscurity is to reclaim sovereignty. Humility does not mean denying success. It means acknowledging its source. The Stoic knows that fortune is fickle and that every triumph is shared with circumstance, effort, and time. He bows not before the crowd, but before the process that shaped him. The Stoic celebration happens inwardly, not with noise, but with stillness, not with champagne, but with gratitude. He stands in the quiet of his room, looks at what he has built, both within and without, and whispers to himself, "It was worth it." Then he moves on. Not because the triumph means nothing, but because there is still more to become. To the Stoic, life is not a single competition, but an eternal contest against ignorance, impulse, and ego. Today's triumph is only a moment of reprieve before tomorrow's test of virtue. That's why Marcus Aurelius began every day reminding himself, "You will meet with the selfish, the ungrateful, the deceitful," not as a pessimist, but as a warrior preparing for another round in the silent arena of the soul. The Stoic knows the battle for integrity never ends. So why boast between rounds? When you move in silence, you cultivate mystery. And mystery commands more respect than noise ever could. Let your discipline speak louder than your declarations. Let your calmness unsettle those who rely on chaos. Let your consistency become your reputation. You don't need to announce your glow. The world will notice when it can no longer deny it, because real success is not revealed. It's felt. It radiates through conduct, composure, and quiet confidence. Remember this: the world rewards spectacle, but the gods of endurance favor silence. Do not chase validation. Chase virtue. Do not broadcast your ascent. Embody it. Do not measure success in noise. Measure it in peace. Your greatest victories will be invisible to others, but undeniable to yourself. So celebrate your triumphs privately. Let the world wonder how you did it, and never know when. Because the Stoic's glow is not for the crowd. It is the fire that lights his own path quietly, faithfully, eternally. Number 8, the desires of your heart. Your quietest desires are your soul's truest voice, not meant for every ear. There are dreams that shout, and there are dreams that whisper. The world will always reward the loud ones, the ambitious, the boastful, the public. But the Stoic learns to listen to the quiet ones, the subtle impulses that rise not from ego, but from essence, because what is born in silence is preserved by it, and what is shared too soon often dies in the noise of other people's opinions. Desire itself is not a sin. It is a compass. It points toward what the soul seeks to become. But the Stoics warned that unguarded desire becomes attachment. And attachment, once named and displayed, becomes fragile. Epictetus taught, "Don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish that they happen as they do, and your life will go smoothly." He wasn't telling us to abandon dreams. He was teaching us how to protect them from corruption. The Stoic does not suppress his desires. He refines them. He asks, "Does this serve virtue or vanity?" And in that question, his longing becomes pure. When you share your deepest desires, you invite distortion. Each listener adds their projection, their bias, their limitation. Your dream, once clear, becomes clouded by other people's fears. Seneca wrote, "If you would be happy, do not add to your desires, but subtract from your needs." In other words, keep what is sacred within your control. A desire expressed too early becomes a performance, but a desire kept private remains a prayer. Dreams are like seeds. They are small, fragile, easily overlooked. Expose them to too much light, the glare of attention, the heat of envy, and they wither. But bury them deep within the fertile soil of discipline and patience, and they begin to take root, silently. You do not dig up a seed each day to see if it's growing. You water it quietly, protect it from storms, and trust the process. So too with your desires. Plant them deep in your daily actions. Let them grow unseen until one day they emerge, strong, undeniable, self-evident. In an age of overexposure, privacy is power. Everyone speaks of their goals, their 5-year plans, their next big move. But the Stoic knows that the more you speak of your desire, the less energy remains to fulfill it. Modern life has confused expression for execution. But talking about a path is not the same as walking it. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one, likewise. Waste no time declaring what you wish to do. Do it. Let your actions become the echo of your desire." Restraint does not mean suppression. It means refinement. By not speaking your desire, you concentrate its power. It becomes like fire under pressure, quiet, but unstoppable. The Stoics practiced this kind of alchemy. They learned to transform longing into purpose, and purpose into movement. Their silence was not secrecy, it was strategy. They did not broadcast intention. They embodied it. For in the realm of creation, energy preserved is power multiplied. Ask yourself, do I want this because it's true to me, or because it looks good to others? That question alone will strip away half your desires, because most of what we chase are borrowed dreams, echoes of other people's ambitions, expectations, or fears. The Stoic trims away the borrowed and listens for the genuine. He trusts that what remains, what still burns after silence and scrutiny, is what he was meant to pursue. Desire, when purified of ego, becomes destiny. There is a sacred weight in what remains unspoken. You can feel it in the chest, not as anxiety, but as quiet pressure. That pressure is purpose-gathering strength. It's the seed expanding beneath the soil. The Stoic does not rush to relieve it through conversation or validation. He allows it to build, to mature, to guide him, because he knows that fulfillment requires gestation, that what is destined to endure must first be invisible. Not every dream is meant to be understood, and that is by design. When others misunderstand your vision, do not argue. Their confusion is protection. It shields your purpose from dilution. Seneca said, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live. So too, as long as you desire, keep learning how to desire wisely." Let misunderstandings strengthen your resolve, not weaken it. For what the world mocks today, it may one day call wisdom. Patience is the secret guardian of every sacred dream. When you plant a desire, time becomes your greatest ally. The Stoic does not demand that dreams bloom instantly. He understands that what blooms too fast rarely lasts. Each delay refines your readiness. Each obstacle shapes your character. And by the time the dream unfolds, you are strong enough to hold it without trembling. So wait, not passively but with purpose. For time, when met with discipline, becomes destiny's partner. Your desires are not weaknesses. They are instructions from the soul. But they must be handled with reverence. Protect them from noise, shield them from envy, and water them with silence, effort, and faith. Do not beg the world to understand your dream. Most people can't see beyond their own, and that's all right, because dreams are not meant to be understood. They are meant to be fulfilled, so hold your desires close. Let them grow in the unseen soil of your daily actions. And when they finally bloom, let the world witness the garden, but never the planting. Dreams are like seeds. Expose them too early, and the world tramples them. But plant them deep within you, and they'll grow strong enough to break the surface in their own time. That is the Stoic way, to dream silently, to work quietly, and to arrive unmistakably. Number 9, your personal growth. The caterpillar never announces its transformation. It simply emerges as a butterfly. It doesn't post about the struggle inside the cocoon. It doesn't seek applause for the darkness it endured. It just transforms. And the world, astonished, calls it beautiful. Growth, too, thrives in silence. Every genuine transformation begins in obscurity, in the unseen moments of reflection, restraint, and quiet effort that no one claps for. There comes a season in every person's life when the outside world no longer feels aligned. When you feel the pull inward, toward solitude, discomfort, and self-examination, the unwise panic in that season. They rush to explain themselves, to justify their silence, to narrate their growth before it's complete. But the Stoic understands the sacredness of the cocoon. It is not isolationist, it is incubation, a temporary retreat where the soul repairs what the world has broken. As Seneca wrote, "Withdraw into yourself as far as you can." He knew that the world cannot understand your transformation while it's still in progress. It's not supposed to. Growth isn't meant to be witnessed. It's meant to be realized. We live in a culture addicted to declaration. Everyone is eager to announce their next chapter, their new mindset, their better version. But the Stoic knows, the more you speak of becoming, the less you actually become. Words, when not supported by transformation, turn to vanity, and vanity is the enemy of wisdom. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." In other words, stop narrating your evolution. Start embodying it, because real change doesn't need a caption. It speaks through conduct, presence, and energy, not through announcement. Growth happens not in grand moments, but in subtle shifts. Each time you pause before reacting, each time you choose patience over pride, each time you forgive instead of retaliate, you are rebuilding the architecture of your soul. These are not small things. They are the true revolutions, quiet, invisible, and life-altering. The Stoic's workshop is internal. He works not with tools of steel, but with thoughts, habits, and self-awareness. He sharpens perception, tempers emotion, and molds character. You may not see the changes day by day, but over time, the sculpture of your being takes form. Why is silent growth so powerful? Because secrecy protects sincerity. When you share your transformation too early, you risk performing it instead of living it. You begin to edit your evolution to impress others rather than to heal yourself. Epictetus warned, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." Notice, he didn't say, "Tell others what you are becoming." The Stoic grows quietly because growth is sacred labor, and sacred things lose their power when exposed too soon. Your growth is a garden. Each insight is a seed. Each challenge is rain. Each mistake is compost, enriching the soil. But no wise gardener digs up their roots every morning to check their progress. They water the soil, remove the weeds, and trust nature's timing. Likewise, you do not need to prove your progress. Just nurture it, privately, consistently, faithfully. Let others see the bloom, not the process. For it is not your words that will convince them. It is the fragrance of your character. Some lessons come not through books or mentors, but through pain. Pain is the teacher the ego resists, yet the soul reveres. When you endure a heartbreak, a failure, or betrayal, you are handed a rare curriculum, one that teaches resilience, humility, and self-control. The Stoics never glorified suffering, but they understood its alchemy. Marcus wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way." That means every obstacle is an invitation, not to complain, but to evolve. The wound is not there to define you. It's there to deepen you. Growth is not measured by how much you move, but by how still you can remain when life storms around you. Anyone can speak wisdom when things are calm, but can you remain composed when chaos visits? Can you hold your principles when the world provokes you? That's where the Stoic proves his progress, not in theories, but in reactions. Each time you respond with calm, where you once responded with anger, you witness your own evolution. No announcement needed. Time is the truest witness of transformation. You don't need to convince anyone that you've changed. Just live. Let your consistency testify. Let your decisions, not your declarations, become your biography. Seneca wrote, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you." But he also knew self-improvement is a solitary endeavor before it's a shared one. You will outgrow environments, friendships, even versions of yourself. Do so gracefully, not boastfully, because real progress doesn't shout, "I've evolved." It simply outgrows what no longer fits. Growth and humility are twins. The moment you start boasting about how far you've come, you risk halting the very process that carried you there. The Stoic does not measure progress through comparison. He does not say, "I am better than who I was." He simply says, "I am learning." Because growth is not an arrival, it's an unending pilgrimage. Each step forward reveals new terrain to master. Seneca's words echo timelessly. As long as you live, keep learning how to live. To the Stoic, there is no finish line, only refinement. Your growth is your most private masterpiece. Don't rush to frame it for the world's approval. Emerge when you're ready, not when you're noticed. The caterpillar doesn't debate whether it's worthy of wings. It simply endures the dark until it's time to fly. And when it does, it doesn't explain its transformation. It just spreads its wings. So grow quietly, evolve privately, and when they finally notice the light in you, smile. And let them wonder how. You don't need to tell the world how you're changing. Just change. And when they notice, let them wonder how. That is the Stoic path, the silent ascent toward mastery. Number 10, your emotions. To feel deeply is human. To express wisely is divine. Emotion is not the enemy of Stoicism. It is the raw material of wisdom. The Stoic does not aim to become emotionless. He aims to become unruled. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor philosopher, wrote thousands of words filled with grief, frustration, and doubt. But he wrote them privately, not for applause, not for validation, but for clarity. Those pages became meditations, not because he sought to teach the world, but because he was trying to understand himself. That is the essence of Stoicism. Feeling fully, but responding wisely. Every emotion is a signal, not a sentence. Anger warns you of violated values. Sadness points to attachment. Fear reminds you of uncertainty. Joy reveals alignment. The Stoic doesn't suppress these emotions. He studies them as a physician studies symptoms, asking not, "Why do I feel this?" but "What is this feeling trying to teach me?" To live without emotion would be to live without humanity. But to be ruled by emotion is to surrender your freedom. Freedom, for the Stoic, begins where emotional mastery begins. When you feel anger surge or sorrow rise, notice how quickly the mind wants to broadcast it, to text, to post, to speak, to unload. But every emotion shared too soon multiplies its power. What could have dissolved in stillness now ripples through others, picking up their reactions, their judgments, their energy. Marcus wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Your emotions are part of that inner dominion. They are your empire to rule, not to surrender at the first gust of passion. A Stoic is not cold. He is contained. He knows that silence is not repression. It is refinement. By holding emotion within the crucible of reflection, he transforms impulse into insight. Before he speaks, he asks, "Will these words serve reason, or will they serve my ego? Does this emotion need to be expressed or simply understood?" Seneca cautioned, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay. Every pause is power. Every silence is a moment of self-possession. In mastering the delay, you master yourself. Imagine emotion as fire. Uncontained, it destroys. Contained, it gives light and warmth. The Stoic is not the one who extinguishes the flame, but the one who builds a vessel strong enough to hold it. That vessel is awareness. When anger arises, he doesn't explode, he observes. When grief comes, he doesn't collapse, he contemplates. When joy visits, he doesn't boast. He breathes it in quietly, knowing it too will pass. For every emotion, no matter how fierce, is temporary. And what is temporary cannot be allowed to command the eternal. Marcus Aurelius once asked himself, "Does this make me a better human being?" That question became his compass through rage, sorrow, and temptation. The Stoic's emotional mastery begins with that same self-inquiry. When provoked, he asks not, "Who offended me?" but "Why does this offend me?" When hurt, not "Who wronged me?" but "Why did I give them the power to?" Each emotion becomes a mirror, reflecting what remains unhealed. And every reflection is a chance to polish the soul a little cleaner. Today, emotion has become performance. Every joy must be posted, every grievance declared, every heartbreak dramatized for an audience that barely listens. But the Stoic lives outside this theater. He doesn't audition for sympathy or applause. He lives quietly, understanding that not every feeling needs witnesses, only wisdom. To share less is not to feel less. It is to feel deeper, without dilution. As Epictetus said, if someone speaks ill of you, do not defend yourself. Respond only if it improves you. He might as well have been speaking of emotions. Don't express them unless it elevates you or others. Stoicism is not the denial of feeling. It is the marriage of heart and reason. Seneca wrote, "Reason shapes emotion as a sculptor shapes clay. Emotion gives life its warmth. Reason gives it direction. Without emotion, life is colorless. Without reason, it is chaos." The Stoic walks the line between both, feeling deeply yet acting deliberately. He weeps if needed, but never wails. He rejoices, but never loses himself in ecstasy. He feels, but he governs. Marcus wrote his meditations as letters to himself, never intended for eyes beyond his own. He confessed, rebuked, and reasoned with himself on those pages. He questioned his pride, his anger, his fatigue, his fear, and in doing so, he practiced the most powerful emotional discipline of all, honest self-conversation. The Stoic's journal is not a record of events, it is a map of emotions, a place where the storms of the heart are charted and understood, until the seas within grow calm again, right, not to be read, but to be revealed to yourself. In moments of intense emotion, restraint is not weakness, it's refinement. The untrained mind believes expression equals authenticity. But Stoicism teaches that true authenticity lies in alignment, when what you feel, think, and do are in harmony. To feel rage but choose patience, that is authenticity. To feel despair but choose courage, that is authenticity. To feel hurt but choose grace, that is divinity. Because restraint is not the absence of emotion, it's the mastery of it. There will always be days when emotion overwhelms, when grief feels heavier than reason, when love burns brighter than caution, when anger feels righteous and unstoppable. In those moments, the Stoic does not deny feeling. He sits with it. He breathes. He waits. He understands. And when the storm passes, as all storms do, he writes, he reflects, he learns. Marcus did. Seneca did. You can too. For emotion, when understood, becomes wisdom. When expressed without thought, becomes regret. So before you share your anger, your sorrow, your joy, pause and ask, does this need to be said, or does it simply need to be understood? The wise choose understanding. The Stoic chooses mastery. And from that mastery comes peace. In the end, the most powerful person in the room isn't the one who fills the silence. It's the one who commands it. While others scramble to be seen, the Stoic remains unseen, calm, composed, unreadable. His silence is not emptiness, it's control. It's the space between impulse and action, between emotion and wisdom, between who he was and who he is becoming. Because the Stoic understands something most never will. What you reveal, you surrender. What you guard, you grow. The loud chase validation. The wise cultivate presence. The world may demand your opinions, your emotions, your story. But a Stoic gives only what serves his purpose, never what feeds his ego. Remember, even nature speaks this truth. The ocean makes the most noise at the surface, but its true power lies in the deep. The storm shouts, but the mountain endures in silence. And so must you. Let others chase attention. You chase alignment. Let others expose themselves for approval. You protect your peace for mastery. Because silence isn't weakness. It's discipline in its purest form. It's not about saying nothing. It's about saying only what matters. So the next time you're tempted to explain, to prove, to reveal, pause. Remember, mystery is strength. Restraint is power, and silence is strategy. If you've made it this far, you're already part of the rare few walking the Stoic path. The path of quiet dominance, unshakable composure, and inner sovereignty. This is Stoic Sage Academy, where wisdom whispers louder than noise. Guard your words, honor your silence, and let your presence speak for itself.